Most directors lose the business because they leave things too late and they let fear make the decisions for them. And that is exactly what happened here. Nearly £200,000 owed to HMRC and a director who was drowning in stress, hiding from letters and terrified to answer the door. If he'd have waited even a few more weeks, HMRC were going to petition to wind him up. And he's based in Scotland and things are a little bit different in Scotland and not as easy to deal with. So this director had buried his head in the sand for months, and then one night he watched one of these videos on YouTube and he realised his situation was spiralling out of control, and he finally picked the phone up. And that simple decision, literally the first call was 5 minutes long, it ended up saving his business, his livelihood and hopefully his future. Now I want you to watch this story to the end, especially if you're behind with HMRC, because this case proves that even when things look impossible, if you act fast and you act smart, you can save a company that's worth saving. Okay? So let's talk about what actually went on. What was the situation? So a Scottish business owner, it's important that I mention that they're in Scotland, which I'm going to come to later on. Basically, he took his eye off the ball, he had some ill health, he had some personal issues going on, and he ended up owing the revenue over £200,000, and that was a combination of VAT and PAYE. Now originally, he tried to set up a payment plan, he did a time to pay arrangement, and he was paying it back over a period of 2 years. So he did really well to get that time to pay arrangement. But what happened was some customers stopped paying. His head was out of the game and he missed his next VAT payment. And then he started to miss his time to pay payments. And what actually happened is his time to pay arrangement breached. And he just went through the debt collection process at HMRC. Now, there was no communication for months. Like, he didn't hear anything off HMRC and he thought, right, well, I'm not going to ring them. And then the letters started to come, the phone calls come, and he ignored them. He didn't want to touch anything. Fear had turned into paralysis. And HMRC had escalated this and they were preparing a winding up petition. Now, this is common. Like, good people freeze under pressure. Obviously, for those that don't know, I was like you. Like 10 years ago, I had a business that had been going great guns for years, and literally overnight it collapsed through circumstances, a market change. And I remembered owing HMRC money, and I was frightened to death to speak to them. Like, I'll tell you this story that there was, and I know this guy personally now, the HMRC officer for my area. What happens is if you don't pay HMRC, they'll phone you, they'll send letters, but eventually they'll come to your business address, and that could be your home address. And what had happened is I was out of the office this day, but this HMRC enforcement agent had come up to our office, and we were on the first floor of this farm building. And one of my staff members had rang me and said, Chris, there's an HMRC enforcement agent here. So I'm a bit sheepish. I said, well, just tell him I'll ring him when I get back. So I got back and I've got this guy's number here, and I'm thinking, now anyone sane would have rang the guy to talk the situation off. Do you know what my best thinking was in this scenario? I'm going to put a lock on the door so if he comes back, he can't walk in. That is how crazy I was, because I just didn't know what I didn't know. You know, I froze under fear. Now, for this guy in Scotland, the turning point is he watched a YouTube video like this. He was sat down one night, probably doom scrolling, and a funny looking four-eyed chap with no glasses popped up speaking to him. Now, he found a video about how I explain HMRC will push for winding up petitions if you don't act. Like, this is going out probably December 2025. I've never seen so many HMRC winding up petitions. Like, literally every single day we'll be speaking to people for months saying, listen, you've got to do something. Things are getting really hot out there. and we'll get an email and they'll go, Chris, I think I've had a winding up petition. And they've not received the winding up petition. What they're doing is they're getting phone calls off call centres or emails coming out to them saying, a petition's been served in court, we can help you. Now, once he watched this video, he realised actually liquidation could be a safe option, and he finally decided to pick the phone up. And I remember speaking to this guy, and he said at the end of it, I should have called you months ago. And I told him, listen, it doesn't matter when you call. What matters is you have called now. That's the important thing. And the key insight here is when we dug into it, that in and amongst all the problems, there was a good business. Now, when we looked at it and we went, right, you're £200,000 behind with HMRC. Let's have a look at whether we can negotiate another time to pay arrangement. You know, that remember, a good insolvency guy will try and help you avoid insolvency. So when we dug into the details, I've just got the notes up on my phone, like £200,000 over 12 months was going to be a no-no. It was going to be 16 grand a month. There was absolutely no way. And we basically worked out the only way potentially could get through is over 3 years. Now, when he spoke to HMRC, because he'd failed a number of times to pay arrangements over the years, they just said to him, no, we're not going to do £5,000. We're not going to give you 3 years. We're actually looking at winding the business up. So when we looked at it, we thought, well, his turnover's okay. There is a profit margin in this business without the HMRC issues. And there's a customer base that seems to be quite consistent. He's not had any disputes with clients, no bad reviews. The problem really wasn't the business at its core. He took his eye off the ball for a couple of years, and the HMRC debt was that big, it was insurmountable. Now, sometimes businesses are worth saving, but you've got to remove the debt that's crushing it. Now, there were a number of challenges here, so we're looking at things, and this was going to be a pre-pack liquidation, okay? So the reason why it's called a pre-pack is he was going to sell his assets to a new company before he appointed the insolvency practitioner, and you've got to be mega careful here. If you are insolvent and you are looking at selling assets out of your business to a new company, an insolvency practitioner is going to look at this like a hawk. It's really important that you're not trying to essentially rip creditors off. So there were a number of challenges that we had to navigate, and the first one was when he set up a new company. Now, his new company had a totally separate name, but his idea was he was going to set up a new company. He was going to purchase the assets and the goodwill of the insolvent company and start trading. So, set up the company. Remember, you had to have a very different name to the old co. He went to get a bank account set up. His accountant then registered for PAYE and VAT. But when he's gone to get insurance, all the insurance companies were mega cautious, and he were looking at new companies. He was trying to get, it was Aviva who his insurance company was, and for just weeks and weeks they never ever got back to him, and it took a lot longer than expected to secure cover. Now obviously if the winding up petition had happened, the business would have been over. Without the insurance, the director legally couldn't operate in the new company, and it seemed like daily we're talking to brokers, we're trying to push. If he'd have known where Aviva based, he would have been there knocking on the door, and eventually at the last minute he got sorted. Now there was another issue. There was a number of vans this guy had, and they were on finance, but there was very little equity in them. So what I mean by that, let's say a van is worth £10,000 and they have sort of £9,500 worth of finance on it. There's very little equity. Now, sometimes you'll just go to your existing finance company and you'll say to them, right, I'm looking at doing a pre-pack. Will you support me and allow me to novate these agreements over to the new company? They were personally guaranteed as well. And they said no. So what he had to do, he needed to find a new finance deal and find somebody who would finance these vehicles quickly and move them into the new co. So we worked with him, we spoke to brokers, and he dealt with specialist lenders who understood these processes and understood the time sensitivity of them all. And obviously we had to ensure that in the new co, these vehicles that he's getting refinanced, the repayments needed to be affordable. So in his new business, he's not going to be under lots of financial pressure like he is in the old co. Now, sort of back to what I was talking about earlier, the time pressure of around HMRC. Now, in Scotland, it's a little bit different, okay? Once the winding up petition is filed, there's no court date, there's no ability to go and speak to a judge or ask HMRC to withdraw for their costs. It is a really, really strict system. And on a certain date, an insolvency practitioner just gets appointed, okay? So we had to work really, really fast because we knew in the background HMRC are about to wind up. But we've had a valuation done. He's valued the business, he's valued the vehicles. His new company is essentially going to buy the business back for £11,000, okay? Which was the in situ figure the agent has recommended. Now, when he does this, anyone looking at it, anyone who scrutinises the fact that he's actually sold assets pre-appointment would see that he has paid more than market value from the new co. He can't be criticised. It's mega, mega important. If you are thinking of selling assets before you appoint an insolvency practitioner, you are going to be scrutinised. They're going to be suspicious. You've got to make sure your belt and braces, get an independent agent to value the business, value the assets, and make sure you pay what that in situ value was. Now, another thing was, while all this was going on, the director continued to trade. And that was the right move. Because there are people that will tell you, listen, you're insolvent, you need to shut the doors down immediately. But when we assessed this, there was a number of live jobs. There was a lot of money that was still due to come in. And the only costs to getting that money in was some fuel, some electric, and some staff's wages. Now, if he'd have stopped instantly and shut the doors, that would have been pretty much a zero return for creditors. People would have lost their jobs. So what we advise is, listen, trade on, but under very, very strict guidance. It's got to be in the creditor's best interests. And the reality is he bought 50 grand into the business during that period. He bought 50 grand in, and I think it cost him 11 grand to bring the 50 grand in. So if you're a business out there thinking, should I keep trading? Can I go and do this job? So let's say you've got a job to do that's going to bring in 10 grand. Well, if it's going to cost you 12 grand to do the job, you don't do the job. But if you have to spend sort of £5,000-6,000 to bring in that £10,000, that is in the creditor's interests, okay? Creditors got a better return in this scenario. And also, the business kept its reputation. Now, people will say to you that you've got to stop trading immediately if you become insolvent. You know, insolvency is, can I pay my debts on time? Are my liabilities more than my assets? Now, if you can't pay your debts on time, it's a clear sign that you're insolvent. But what I'd ask you the question is, have you got a hope of getting on a firm financial footing? Have you got some money dropping in at the end of the month and this is just a short-term issue? Have you got a load of retentions? Are you a seasonal business and you can just get through this last bit and then the sun will start shining again? Now listen, if you're worried about solvency, worried about whether you should be continuing to trade, I would suggest hit the comment section, click on that link. One of my team will call you today, free, impartial, no obligation. And listen, this is how we save the business, okay? Once the insurance was set up, once the vehicle finance were in place, what we did is, he had the valuation done. We spoke to the insolvency practitioner and said, listen, he's looking at buying the business. His offer's going to be £11,000 plus VAT. The insolvency practitioner said, well, what's the agent says? The agent has recommended that figure. The agent will recommend that sale at £11,000 plus VAT. And then an invoice was raised from insolvent company to new company, and it was sold on an invoice basis. And then we're left with a shell with a lot of HMRC debt. And in the liquidation, that full £200,000 went into the liquidation. It got written off. Okay, a winding up petition was avoided. The assets and the equipment were valued professionally and transferred out of the company legally, okay? The new co started clean, debt-free, and it has the best chance of survival. Now, when he actually realised the new company were live and, we were out trading, he was making some money, he actually got teary on the phone. And that's how much pressure he'd been under. So the result was HMRC, the debt was written off through the liquidation. We avoided the winding up petition. The new company is up and running. The vehicles have been refinanced successfully. The business continues to trade. The director kept his livelihood. And the creditors received a better outcome than a forced insolvency. And obviously the director, his mental health's back on track. Look, if you are behind with HMRC, you have got less room for error, okay? Because once that petition hits, and they are hitting every day, potentially your business could be gone. But this case proves something powerful. You're never too late until you're actually too late. One phone call changed everything for this guy. Do what he did. Pick the phone up. We can help you before it's too late. Thank you for your time. Chris Worden, Director First. And I want you to go here. If you're behind with HMRC, I want you to go and watch that video, and it'll tell you how to set up a time to pay arrangement with HMRC. What to do, what not to do. It will help you when you speak to HMRC, and it's free. I'm not even going to charge you for it. Thank you.